Welcome to the Culture Podcast, where we uncover the hidden mechanics of high control groups, their tactics, and their impact. And we speak with the survivors who broke free. My name is Derek, and I'm your host.
My name is Trinity, and I'm also your host. On this podcast, we explore cult life as real people who have lived through the life-changing process of leaving a high control group. Welcome to the Culture Podcast, where we explore what it means to leave behind the beliefs that once defined us and step into the unknown in search of something real. I'm one of your hosts, Trent. I've got my co-host with me as always, Derek.
We're sitting down with someone who grew up inside the Jehovah's Witness faith, a high control religious group. I don't know, Natty, would you call it a cult?
I do, yeah.
Okay. So we're sitting down with Natty, an old friend that grew up in the cult. And in this conversation, we're going to talk about her story and just kind of wherever she wants to guide it and take it. And it's basically her kind of thoughts growing up as a youth in this community. And we're really looking forward to chatting with her. And I'm very, very happy and excited to have you on the podcast.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
You know, Trent and I, we've talked earlier about how this podcast, even though we are on it hosting, this story isn't, or this conversation isn't really about us. It's about the people that join us. But the nice thing is we can kind of share some of the mindsets of whoever is gracious enough to come on and talk with us. So I want to kind of set the stage. Can you share with us and the millions of people that are listening to us on the internet? You're like, no pressure.
I'm fine.
Can you share with us a little bit about your background growing up as one of Jehovah's Witnesses?
So I was born into the religion. My father was an elder, has been my whole life. My mother and father met at an assembly, actually, so in the early 70s. And as they began to have children, of course, that's how we were raised. So I remember being a very little girl, going and sitting in the front row. And I used to really love, getting all dressed up on Tuesdays and Thursdays and Sundays. And back then it was 3 days a week. I really used to love hearing my father give talks. I think that was the biggest thing. He was a wonderful speaker and, but there was a lot of cracks. Even when I was a little kid, my father was he was one way at the Kingdom Hall and definitely another way at home. Very high control, for sure. We were all perfect. We had to be perfect because he was an elder and my mother was an elder's wife. So
I remember growing up and looking at some of the imagery in the Watchtower and Awake magazines. And I would always think like, that's who we want to look like.
yes.
The family sitting together at the table studying, or, at the couch, or all just perfect going out in the ministry. I think a lot of people probably tried to emulate that and attain that.
Sure, I agree.
But I can also agree with you when it comes to my experience. Gosh, my father was just two different people, but based on who he was around.
Same. I think they teach them that, because as elders, they have to be very diplomatic and they have to steer the sheep,
Yeah.
Big time.
I have a thought.
Sure.
My thought is like my relationship with my dad was similar. I loved watching him give talks. It was amazing. And I think that it's not necessarily that they're like putting on another personality on purpose, but what I think is there's their default mode that they're in at home.
Right.
And then the fake one is the one they give to the witnesses.
Mm.
Right. I agree.
I don't know if that resonates with you guys, but that's how I feel it is about my dad, because he always was himself at home, and around his family and stuff. But it's really like the business end of being a witness where he really changed.
Well, and it's interesting for your father, Trent, because he may come on this podcast.
Yeah, and the thing is, we have like multiple lifetimes of trauma, not just from like witness stuff, but other stuff too. So
I really do try to, forgive me for interrupting. I really do try to
yeah, you're good.
give people grace and space, like our parents. They
Yeah.
they never got anything like we have an awareness to try to do better and
I agree.
to try to heal each other and this generational trauma curse. They're just not equipped. And they said, I'm gonna go, and they didn't have the internet, they didn't have resources. They're like, I'm gonna join this group that I think is gonna be the savior.
Yep.
And you mentioned the 70s, Natty, where I don't know, I'm sure you know this, but they thought the world was gonna end in 75.
Yes, they did. And my parents went through that actually. They lived, on the West Coast, and I, I remember stories of them, like people selling their businesses, my dad said, and like
Yeah.
selling all of their belongings, living in RVs because the end was coming. Charles Taze Russell is crazy. And like all of the stuff they prophecy, all these prophecies that they were like, but that was what the third time they had like said the world was going to end or something. Like it happened in what, the 30s, the 20s, the 40s, the 70s, something like that. So
Yeah.
I think that it was really weird. Obviously my parents didn't think that much into it, but it was always like that even growing up. Well, the world's going to end, so we have to live this certain way. And I think a lot of it was, it was a high control religion that my father was able to control my mother with, and in turn control the children with.
Just control, huh? It was used for control.
Control. It was control, 100% control of, so that he could do what he wanted when no one was looking, obviously, and then keep control of everything else that was going on in the house and the kids. And I, to play devil's advocate for a moment, I was raised with good morals and good values that I think I even passed along to my own children without all the fucking trauma. you know I still told them, like, we don't want to date just to date. Like, we don't want to date to practice divorce. And like raising my own kids, there was so much good that they could have done with the religion and with the rules and all of the things. But I think that it just became like killing an ant with a hammer kind of thing for so long that by the time I was like 14, I was like, this is such a crock of shit. Like, I'm not doing this. I don't like, that's when I really started putting my foot down. Like, I'm not going to the fucking meetings. I don't care what you say. And I'm a very high maintenance, very headstrong woman. But I was, even at 13, 12, 13, 14, I was already becoming who I am now and saying, I don't want to do this. This doesn't make sense to me.
Well, that's some of the stuff we've already talked about, even in just a few of these first episodes, where as you start to get into these kind of preteen and early teenage years, you start to kind of shape really who you are.
Right.
And that's kind of the crime of some of these cults and high control groups, where you're constantly in check, where you're kind of like, I feel like I naturally should be this one way,
Yeah.
but my worldview is constantly resetting me to go back this other way.
Yes.
And then you also have, your parents who you're like, you're supposed to be out there protecting me, guiding me, shepherding me. And this is the framework that you've given me to walk down. And so it's super confusing all the time, because you just naturally go like, I kind of want to be like this other person.
Right. Like, I don't want to do this. And I remember being really young and sitting up front in my pretty frilly little dresses with bells and, you know, hair done perfect. And my brothers sitting next to me, and, my mother nursing my younger siblings in the back, and, us having to behave like perfect little witnesses. And there was no room for acting up or being sick or not feeling well or just being a fucking kid at
Yeah.
7 or 8 or 9 going, I don't want to sit for 2 hours. I'm tired. I've been at school all day and now I got to come do this all night. And you want me to answer? And I have to, like, it was so much, dude. It was so much.
I've heard Derek talk to me like that for like 2 decades because he hates doing shit.
Uh, I feel like the more and more I kind of piece together my own thoughts about how I thought about things growing up, I was always resistant.
Yep. Same.
I never really wanted to really put a lot of energy into it.
Nope.
But I just was like, this is real though.
I have to do this.
I mean, I don't want to die in Armageddon, and I want to make it to paradise.
And it always came down to them saying, we don't want to lose you. You have to be with us. This is why we're doing this. Like,
And I personally had extra guilt and shame because I wanted to see my mom in paradise.
right. Yeah.
It always came down to that.
Yeah.
I remember crying in a bathroom one time, um,
Yeah.
just like I'm sinful and I'm not going to see my
Oh,
mom.
oh, D.
Yeah, so it's like that's the type of shit that they do to you, where you're like, where you kind of you stray a little bit
Right.
in your thoughts or your actions, and then they have this talk where they shame you or guilt you, and you're like, well, fuck, I don't want to.
Right.
Yeah. I had family I wanted to see too, man.
Right.
I don't want to die. You know, it's a doomsday religion or cult. You know, where you're constantly afraid. I have memories of I'm never going to make it out of junior high school.
Same.
The end's coming.
I agree.
So just weird stuff like that. But to go back to one of the things you said, I also agree, and Trent and I have talked about this, is I do believe that there's really core values that I'm very thankful for that I got being raised, in that religion.
Yeah. We both benefited so much from the speech training they did, the talk training they gave, and I've recounted so many times how they just eat you alive when in the school, theocratic ministry school.
So you get it.
Yeah, and eventually they'll make you work on it 3, 4, 5 times in a row, and they mark your book up and make notes, and woof, I
Let's
mean,
work on this counsel point inflection, okay, Trent?
yeah.
Uh,
I feel like boys were very different from young girls. Like, cause I was a young,
Y'all get pioneer school.
yes. And so it was very different for me.
Yeah.
Like, having talks with older women who I looked up to, who I loved, who I went out in service with, and things like that. So I really enjoyed it. But I also come from a very large family, so I had lots of cousins. My entire family is in the religion. Every single one of them.
they're still in.
Yes, I only have one set,
Mm,
an aunt and an uncle that are not, and their children, but everybody else,
yeah.
like everybody else, that's what they have always done, and it started with my grandmothers. And I always believed that they prayed on poor, ethnic. They would go into these areas and talk these older women into do, because my dad's mother was a Catholic.
Mm.
They were Catholic. And they got her to convert, and she eventually took all of her children with her, and they all are still witnesses. And you know
And they all are praying that you'll come back to the sheep, come back to the flock.
I mean, I've had ones pull me aside and literally say to me, you're not a bad person, and we want to be with you in the new system, and we love you, and nothing that happened was your fault, but where the fuck were you when I was 14?
Well, yeah, that's the thing, is that you learn to keep a distance,
Yeah.
and you learn that, again, a talk comes out or you watch a video or a part that says, don't forget your lost loved ones.
Right.
And then you go, oh, yeah, I need to send them a text or whatever, or speak with them.
I've got to remember to tell them they're not bad. And
Yeah.
And the interesting thing is, my personal view is I actually have pity on them.
right.
And it's such a crazy clusterfuck, because it's this cycle where, like, we truly believe that they're just living this crazy life, and then they genuinely believe we are,
Right. Right.
and there's just no way to come to an accord there. I did want to back up, Trent. Can you break down, we talked about kind of the ministry school and kind of how that process works. Can you break that down for people that are listening? How it works for men, and then how women are expected to be teachers, because
Yeah.
let's face it, they're not allowed to.
Nope. Not unless you cover your head. Cover your head.
So oh, yeah, my God. I was aware of that rule from the age of 13 onward because of my parents' divorce. And so my mom and sister, my mom would lead book study or private family study with me, and she would wear a headscarf every time. I always really respected it.
Yeah.
The TMS, the Theocratic Ministry School, is like, I would love to use this system in work, but no employee would let me. Like, you cannot ever really expect someone to do that unless you are signed up. And so they do have you sign up. You sign up for the Theocratic Ministry School. As soon as you step foot on the stage, you're being judged by like 7 guys, but really 1 or 2 who's in charge of the Theocratic Ministry School. And then you proceed to get eaten alive in the best way because they genuinely want you to be a model speaker. And so there's like 86 or 100 different talking points in that book, and it varies from time to time. But like, I would make it my goal to study them. Like, that's what I studied for fun, and I would just work on it by myself.
Wow.
And so you give like a 5 or a 10 or a 15 or even a 30-minute talk.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're real good, back in the 90s and thousands, and the aughts, you're doing public talks that are an hour. And then they reduce it to 45 minutes, maybe 30 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
And so it genuinely is like a college level speaking experience that me and Derek both passed with flying colors. And the only reason I think we didn't do more was because we could not clean up our lives to that extent where we would be like, worthy of giving a public talk.
Well, I learned again, this was kind of the deep down stuff where I was just like, I don't want to climb this ladder.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you fall off the ladder and they push you off the ladder all the time.
I'll be well, I think you guys maybe have similar stories, but
Mm-hmm.
there is kind of a pressure to join as early as possible. You're an unbaptized publisher as early as possible. And a publisher, again, for those listening, is someone who goes out and preaches door to door. And then you're expected to join the ministry school, and you receive so much praise, and all the older ones come to you and like, your talk was so great. And so there's kind of this praise kind of cycle that happens. But for the men were allowed to actually give the talk. So they're given the sermon.
Women can participate maybe on special ones.
But the workaround for women was they were never allowed to give an outward facing talk on the platform.
Uh,
They just had to sit at a table and talk to only another woman.
mm-hmm.
You were never allowed to preach to a man.
And it could never be that the woman appears to be educating a man. It could only be the other way around.
So it was always an older
Yep.
woman talking to a younger
Yep.
publisher.
Yeah, and they call brothers and sisters, not culty at all.
Yeah.
And and so yeah, 2 sisters would talk on the stage and kind of sit down as if they were preaching to one another, and that would be the way that women could participate in the meetings while not technically ministering to men on the platform and not having to wear a head covering. So it's kind of a weird kind of workaround, but
It is.
that's what Natty was talking about earlier there. So I just wanted to break that down. But
Hey, and real quick, you asked about Pioneer School. Pioneer School, both sexes can go to,
Mm-hmm.
but it really is like, it's more like the sisters can be equal because the men that are there in a pioneer capacity. So it was like, I just remember the women flocking to it and wanting to be like auxiliary and regular pioneers, which back in my day was like 30 to 40, 50 hours and 70 to 90 hours a month.
crazy.
And it was tracked, and you really were forced to uphold your social identity in any of these programs by necessity.
Yeah.
If you fell off in some way, you would hear about it. If they saw you kiss somebody, you're out. You're out. You curse, at the wrong party, wrong place, you're out.
It's so dumb. So going back to your kind of upbringing, how do you feel like as a youth, because you said you were out maybe around 15 or 16, how do you feel like your sense of identity and kind of purpose were kind of growing up with the lens of being a Jehovah's Witness?
I was an elder's daughter, so I was being groomed very young to find a mate, a husband that was an elder. I mean, I was a cream of the crop, I guess you'd say, as far as young ladies in the
Eligible bachelorette.
yeah, for sure. I mean, even at a very young age. I mean, we were never allowed to go on dates or anything. We always went out in groups. But I mean, I was 12, 13 and had men that were 18, 19, 20 interested in me, you know. But I had a lot of cousins and a lot of male cousins who were very protective. So anytime, and I'm Hispanic, so we had lots of dances, lots of parties, you know how the Hispanic are. We like to party. So any excuse to throw a party or go hang out and do stuff like that, we definitely did that. So we did a lot of dancing and we hung out, and I think that was who we were, and it was so fun to be around them and go to the assemblies with them in different languages and different towns, and like doing all this stuff. Like that was our way of getting out a little bit, you know.
Hey, I have a question
Sure.
because I'm from a Hispanic family too. Like, do you think it's true that the witness vibe is actually more similar to like Hispanic culture than maybe even being Catholic?
I agree. Yes, absolutely. And they're very strict.
I really think it suits Hispanic people so well because it's like they see the errors in Catholicism and they can see it's not true.
Yep.
And then you hit them with the name Jehovah's in the Bible,
Right.
and the fact that maybe the Trinity isn't real
Yes.
and all these other things. And all of a sudden they're like weaponized. They're because they already have faith usually. And then you hit them with, we like to congregate 4 times a year and we have big freaking parties where everyone dances and we cook and we bring our own food. And by the way, everyone will love how gregarious and charismatic you are.
Right.
It's
Like, it's like done deal.
it's called a get together.
It's
Okay.
called a get together
Oh, I'm so sorry. A gathering, get
With
together.
the
with
friends.
the
Okay.
friends.
Yeah.
That doesn't sound culty at all.
I well, that again goes back to the difficulty where some things are good
Yeah.
and some things are bad.
Yes.
There's always a duality there where
But I didn't understand what the bad was because I was raised in it. I didn't from the time I was a baby. I mean, I was answering at 3 years old, standing on the chair waiting for the mic like, a prompted answer.
And I bet your family treasured that.
They absolutely did. And I was,
Yeah.
so very cute in my, you know, fluffy dresses and my little attitude, and I loved getting on the stage and twirling and all of these things that you do at the end of the meeting when you're running up and down the aisles waiting for your elder father to get out of his 3-hour meeting, like,
oh, so
Yeah.
just waiting for all of that. But more than anything, I just wanted to be praised and perfect and have my dad look at me and go, "You're perfect and you're great and everything's fine." And as I got a little older, I just noticed more and more cracks
hmm
in my own mother, in the other witnesses that were around me. And I guess it really took me hanging out with one of my cousins. It's always a cousin. It's always a cousin
always a
that
cousin.
gets you in trouble, that starts smoking or something. And she had a lot more freedom than I did, I think. And so I started to spend a lot more time with her. And she didn't have a mom. Her mom died when she was very young, and so it was just her and her dad, and he loved her, and he was a wonderful dad, but she had very little supervision. So I was like, I'm going to her house. We're going to go hang out for the weekend.
Well, it's interesting that you say it is always cousins. There's a really firm truth about why that is because our association was so closely monitored.
Yep.
Yeah, you couldn't. I mean, if it wasn't family, I wasn't
Yeah,
going.
you couldn't just go hang out with a friend from school.
Nope.
You couldn't just go, hey, I met someone, we're gonna go over here and as long as I check in with you, things are okay. Like
Never happened.
it was like who is that?
Right.
And it's like you're not hanging out with him. And it got to a
Right. Are you bringing them to the meeting?
yeah.
Are you gonna solicit them too, or
Yeah, so you wouldn't even make that attempt.
no?
So the cousin was actually ironically always the way that you could have sort of different association because they're like, oh, they're family.
Yep.
Totally, and I was never questioned because I always had a slew of male cousins that were there to protect all of us young girls, to make sure we were okay. and they were very much like our fathers, very like, you're staying here with me, we're going out to eat, we're like, we were always in eye shot. Like I found a picture the other day, which is one of the most telling photographs that I have of me and my cousin, who is my best friend, still is to this day, hasn't been a witness for a very long time either. But there is one of our male cousins out in the corner of the photograph, literally looking at us
That's awesome.
while we're taking the picture. Like in every photograph, he is within eye shot of where we're standing. And that's just how he was. He was always very protective and very loving, and I love him very much. But I never had the same relationship with him once I left. And I missed him so much. All of my cousins, I missed them more than anything, because they were my siblings, they were my friends, and they got away with a lot more because they were older. So they were able to drink, they were able to drive cars, I didn't even have a driver's license when I left home. I was that young. So,
I want to say that I had a similar experience, but I was ostracized from my Mexican family. And like my mom and dad made sure that I couldn't interact with my cousins, because every time I did, we had the best time ever. And I got
of
in the most
course.
trouble that I've ever been in. And they taught me the worst habits,
Yes.
you know? And so they kept us away. And like I grew up longing for them and not having them. So I kind of had to lean more into my witness family and my witness brothers, because my family was so strict that I couldn't. So opposite ends.
Well, I wasn't really allowed to hang around with a lot of kids in my hall because my father was an elder.
Yep.
He knew what went on in every one of their
Yep.
households, and there was a lot of shit that goes on. So there were very specific people that I had been friends with from the time I was very, very little in the hall. And I was able to go to their homes, and I was able to spend the night over there and hang out. But that wasn't just anybody. These were people that I knew my whole life. They were like family. And it was probably only about two different girls. Like I wasn't even allowed to go out in service with these girls. Like I couldn't hang out with anybody unless they were related to us, or it was these two girls that I had grown up with, whose fathers were very much like my own fathers. Very strict. I don't think one of them, her dad wasn't an elder. He was in the military, so he wasn't even in the truth. But him and my dad got along very well because my dad had been in the military before he became a witness.
I was gonna ask. I was gonna ask. I already knew. I already knew the answer before I asked. I already knew. That's my dad all the way, and like my family and that control.
Hmm.
I did some self-therapy about my own desires for control in my life, and I found that military families have an inordinate amount of control issues
Hmm.
because of
Yeah.
the military system and how it molds their mind early on that control equals safety.
Yes. Agreed.
And so that is like so in my family, my God, it's so true. And so what's funny is now the way I show love to my own is by releasing control, right?
Yeah.
That's how I act. That's how you actually show someone you love them, is by releasing your control over them.
Yeah.
Like, is my bird gonna fly away when the door's open type thing.
Right.
Well, I think the work should be done early, in my opinion, where then you can feel comfortable with releasing the control.
Yeah.
You put all the hard work in early to kind of establish the guidelines, so then you can kind of you don't. It's so crazy the amount of control, and people listening, if they just didn't grow up in this type of environment, they just don't fully get it. They just don't understand, like, everything was monitored, and the more and more we get away from it, we just realize, like, gosh, I don't want to mimic that. I don't want to mirror that. I got to be different.
Not at all. I mean, but safety, yes, obviously, but you don't want your children so controlled that they're like little springs. When you let go, they fucking
Yeah.
bounce out of the room. And I think that's what happened to me. The second I was able to, I ran, and I was dangerous because I ran. And I mean, I could have lived my whole life probably and never told anyone what happened to me. And I was willing to lose my entire family for my entire life when I left home. And I was okay. I was okay with that at 15. And that's what was terrifying, I think, to my parents. And my whole family asked for years, where is she? What's happening? How come you don't know? What do you mean you didn't call the police? What do you mean you have no idea where your 15-year-old daughter is? Like the questions they were asked, they couldn't answer because ultimately it was a failure on their part.
Hmm.
It was they were failures as parents.
Well, there's in my mind, there's multiple layers too, because it's like, yeah, they're failures as parents, but they're also, so that's just one thing.
Yes.
But then they're also failures in the upbringing for the religious aspect.
Yes.
And
Right.
they do kind of intersect.
But yet they have the appearance of the opposite.
Everything's fine.
Yeah, because you could genuinely, I genuinely believe there's a lot of witnesses out there, and they're fine.
Yes.
They're fine. They've grown up in this cult their entire life. They have a great family life. I think deep down, they're good people. And then they take this religious and they just kind of make it work.
Yes.
And then there's just people that are damaged and they were looking or broken or whatever word you want to use. They were looking for this religious kind of mindset to help guide them and fix them. And it was just completely not helpful and the wrong answer.
Right. Absolutely. I think all in all, within my family, it was just about control.
Yeah.
I don't think it was anything else because now I see my father and he is very much the man that I always knew that he was, still with all of the same control. But the thing is you can't pull the wool over people's eyes forever. Like we have fucking when I growing up, all I had was encyclopedias to look at and all these books that only the elders had access to, right? So I was able to look at all of this stuff. But now there's the internet, there's podcasts, there's movies, there's Lisa Remney, like there's like all of these people who are like opening up Pandora's box and telling you all about these things. But back in the 70s, the 80s, the 90s, I mean, we didn't have cell phones. We weren't able to just call each other and go come pick me up. Like there was payphones. Like the world is a completely different place. Like you can look up the word narcissistic now and like you
Yes.
could Google everything. And I think back then it was so much easier to hide
Yep.
behind the religion as to who you really were, which was detrimental to me as a young girl in the throes of puberty and learning about who I was and only being room to be a wife. I was never going to be anything more. I was never going to go to college. I was never going to own 3 businesses. I was never going to do anything outside of this box that I had been put in at a very young age.
So let's start taking a couple steps back because you said you left at 15.
I did.
Did you get baptized?
I was baptized, yes.
How old were you when you got baptized?
I was 14.
And what kind of emotions and feelings, if you can recall them, were there around your baptism?
I only did it because my cousin did it. My bad cousin. She had done it. And I was like, okay, it's fucking time, I guess. Because I mean, she's doing it. She's sleeping with guys. Like, she's going out. She's partying. Like, she's getting fucking baptized. Why can't I do it? So I figured that that would help a little bit as far as getting, once you're baptized, now you're being held accountable. But that also meant a little more freedom like, from what I understood, you get a little more freedom because now you're baptized, right? So you get to hang out with more people, you get to go more places. And I was really interested in a boy, and he was very interested in me. And so I wanted to start going out with the older kids and being more a part of the group dates and the group activities and, going bowling and going to the movies. And because I knew, heaven forbid, you drag 5 brothers to a date, or whatever, all of your siblings. I remember looking at my dad going, nobody's ever going to marry me. I got all these boys that you're sending everywhere I go. I have to take my brothers with me or my cousins or you know,
That's another thing that is wild, like the level of chaperone.
I know.
Uh, it's like it's so ridiculous. And then you touched on it a little while ago, but just to bring it back because you were kind of mentioning it again, it's wild to think how young you're thinking about courting and marriage.
Right. But well, because it's a finishing school, 100%. It's a fucking finishing school. You are doing all of this work, right? You're young and you're living at home, and then you start to have all these feelings. You're not sure where they're coming from, but you just know that your friends are a little older and they're dating. And so, like, in order to do that, you have to start going out after the meetings and having ice cream because everybody else is going. And this is the only besides school, this is the only association that you have is with these people. So you got to find somebody at some point that you could live with, sleeping with,
Yeah. Yeah.
because you're going to get married. You have to get married to fuck somebody. So,
Yep.
I mean, what are you going to do? And I don't think at 14, 13, 14, 15, I don't think I was thinking that far ahead. I was getting a lot of attention from ministerial servants, from young men. So I built an assembly hall. I worked in a department. I learned how to drive a dump truck. I fed all of the brothers and sisters. Like in my town, they were building this massive assembly hall. And I helped with every brick, every fucking light bulb, every meal to feed all of these hundreds of people that came from all over the country. So I was meeting hundreds and hundreds of people. And I started to have friends in all kinds of congregations. I started to have friends in different towns and I started traveling with my older cousins to go visit all these people, and they had parties all the time. And so I was getting out a lot more at such a young age, and I definitely wasn't ready to be sexually active, because that's not what you're supposed to even be thinking about. You're supposed to be thinking about marriage in order to get to that point, right? So I was hanging around with people who were well into their 20s who were dating for marriage. So I was just in that kind of mindset. And all the boys that liked me were much older than me. They were 18, 19, 20, 25. I mean, they were much, much older than me, but I also didn't look my age either. So, I was very dressed up all the time, dressed to the nines, wearing heels and pantyhose, and hair was done perfect. And I spoke well. And you know I didn't look like a little girl.
Yeah, and it's kind of creepy to think some of these 20-year-olds are kind of grooming or kind of potentially wanting to get with a 13 to 15-year-old, but it's not just your story.
I know.
And it's the other thing that's kind of funny too is I'm sure that the Watchtower and Bible Tract Society was very, very thankful for your free labor.
I know they were. But as a young kid, I mean, I was learning skills that now in my business that I'm able to keep using. I learned how to drive a dump truck at 13,
Oh yeah.
a cement mixer. Like, I mean, I was working. I was hardcore breaking my back working, but I also enjoyed eating lunch with hundreds of other witnesses and serving them, and then serving all the men, and then cleaning up, and then eating my food like every other woman there.
And that is one of the unfortunate things that you do lose the community.
Right.
And having those all the groups together and yeah, like quick builds and things where we're building kingdom halls, and
Yeah.
there's a
And it was fun. It was fun.
it was really fun. Yeah. And going to those assemblies and conventions, where it would basically be a large gathering, 5,000 of us, 10,000 of us would get together, all Joe's Witnesses. And for young kids, teenagers, I mean, that was the time to look for someone to date.
Yes, it was. I mean, phone numbers were getting passed out at the Astrodome in the 80s, boy. Let me.
Because you don't get to have that at school. And you're in your own kind of separate church or kingdom hall. You really just have the same old people you've known forever. So going to these assemblies, conventions, it was quite the time.
Right.
But
So, and I loved it, and I loved the camaraderie, and I felt safe. I mean, I thought they were all good people like me. They were just young kids, and they were looking to have fun, and they were looking for girls to hang out with and possibly date. My father was very, very strict, so I knew that I could never just bring a boy home and say I want to date him. I mean, one of the one of the biggest things was getting him to even agree to allow me to go on a group date with this young man that I liked at the time, because he had siblings and I had lots of other friends. I mean, there was a huge group of girls, huge group, and it was never like a pair off amount of people. It was always like 15 girls are going, 22 guys are going. Like, it was a lot of people. Like, we're going to have dinner after the assembly, and then we're all going to go bowling. Like, so getting him to even agree to allow me to drive in a car with another 17-year-old girl who was a couple years older than me, to go to her house to spend the night because her parents were, witnesses too, and to go out with them. Just getting him to allow that was like fucking pulling teeth. He was just like, no, 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 I don't like the kid. I don't like the kid. I don't like the kid. But my father, the really sad thing and the reason I think I blamed myself for so many years is because my father saw what a piece of shit he was.
Mm.
My dad knew. He knew. He knew I was going to get hurt. He knew. And I blamed myself for years for continually pushing them to say, just let me go. He's really nice. His dad's an elder. Please let me go. Let me go. Like, I like him, and not understanding that he was 19 and I was 14.
Yeah.
And I shouldn't have even been in the same car with him,
Yeah, there's the mindset of, well, because they're part of the flock, everything will be okay.
Yeah.
And I remember moments too when I was younger where like I was like 16, 17, and I just went to a movie with like a 30-year-old guy.
Right.
Like me and this guy. And he's like, yeah, you want to go see a movie together? And if I think about that now, like a young teenager going to see a movie with a grown man,
Right.
totally inappropriate. Like, what?
Totally inappropriate.
I have a similar thing, but again, different. Like, I would have older women clamor for me to be in a car group with them. And I'm like 15, 13, 16, and they literally are like, let's grab these two young brothers and have them in the back seat with us, or they're like 25 and we're like 16, 17, 18.
God.
No, and the thing is, it was a good thing because we all wanted to go out in service together. And we were like, "Hey, let's the passing out numbers was all under the pretense of let's go in service and get our 30 hours. Let's make it as quick and easy as we can. Let's get each other's phone numbers and text about this at first, and then we can start flirting."
Right.
And, like, that's how my conscience always did it. But it bothers me because
Yes. Yes.
I was like I was doing rock band stuff as a kid, like 16-ish. I was making music and like just trying to find my place in the world creatively and everything. And it registers less for my stuff that's happened to me because it's mostly just like creepy weird stuff,
Right.
you know?
Right.
But it still hits and I'm kind of like, "Man, those are like 40-year-old sisters that were like routinely putting me in the back of their car because they just really like being out with me and my friends." And
There's countless stories you've heard about
Right.
elders assigning car groups or ministerial
And
servants
yep,
signing car groups.
and the favoritism
Right.
and all that.
Well,
Not even
not only favoritism, but also like, young sister, you're going to come with us.
Yep.
And no one bats an eye. It's like, when they're assigning car groups, it's like, oh, okay, brother Frank's gonna come with us. So it's such and such. And then,
Right.
why don't we just go ahead and take young sister so and so? And everyone's like, okay.
not only that, but the mom is like, "Oh, thank goodness. I'm glad that you're showing an interest in her. She has not been wanting to go out in service lately. Thank you. Will you treat her to a coffee?" You
Yeah,
know?
yeah. This elder's gonna take her under their wing and show her how to preach, and it's just like, again, it's like, in no way, shape, or form would anyone in any other
Normal
kind of
situation.
allow that to
No.
happen.
And I think my dad was really like, he had a very short leash on us. So I believe that he really blamed himself because I essentially begged. I begged. I begged all the time to go out with these people and to hang out with them and to be there. But I think a lot of them were predators. They knew what they were after. They knew what to say and what to do and how to behave at the meetings to ensure that the elders' daughters would be safe with them and okay to go out or do whatever. And it was never like an alone date. Never. It was never an alone date. So I always thought I was safe,
Well,
I
let's kind of talk about, what.
I have a thought I wanna share, Derek.
Sure, sure.
I've recently I've had the same psychologist for like 2 or 3 years, and I've recently started seeing him again. because like what better time to talk to, you know, your friends in mental health care, right?
Right.
He helped me see something that was hard, that my dad was effectively a 22-year-old child with a child. And then he was also a very imperfect dude, just kind of stumbling and tumbling through life, much like I have
Right.
in my 20s and early 30s. And so now, like, to hold my own father to the standard of, you know, the kind of dad I am, like, we're in 2025. There's so many things I have now that I can do that he could not. I mean, I try to share, like, I'm a musician. I try to share my music with him, and he's like, yeah, I can't do that app. Sorry. You know? And so it's like, I get it. I'm starting to get it now that, like, my dad and my mom, a lot of these people who have hurt me, they were also just really hurt, scarred 20, 30-year-olds kind of tumbling and stumbling through life. And now in the year 2025, we've kind of reached critical mass in this point in time where information, like you said, the internet, therapy is more normalized now than ever.
Yeah.
And so we're just like slowly learning these things that I have found are bringing me more peace as I hear a lot of stories that hurt my heart, you know, from people who have been hurt by all sorts of things in life. And then, but I also hear so many beautiful stories of people who are enduring, you know, and I think that's like the compassion that we're trying to approach this with, you know, of like, man, there's just a lot of hurt. And a lot of these witnesses or anyone in any sort of group who perpetuates harm, sometimes these are harmed people too. And there's just like enough harm to go around.
What do they say? Hurt people hurt people.
Yeah. Iron sharpens iron, and hurt people hurt people.
And I think there's two kinds of people in the world. There's people that don't know that they're capable of hurting you. Like they don't do it on purpose. It just is something that happens. And then there's people that they do it on purpose. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
So, and
Hmm.
I try to give my parents so much grace and say like they did the best they could with what they had and what they knew. And the older I get, the more I'm like, they made these choices.
Yeah. And we all have to deal with the consequences of our choices.
Right, because it affected me and still is affecting me and will for my entire life, and it affects me how I parent my own children,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah, they don't get a hall pass. It's like it is
No.
what it is. Like you've done. Like we don't get that time back.
No.
You know what I mean? All we can do is hope to rebuild, repair, try to learn from these experiences we had growing up. But gosh, like parents are supposed to be so much more. Um, uh, and I was thinking, I remember when I left, I told my dad, who was in his 70s, you just need to go talk to a therapist.
Yeah.
Please. I was like, I don't ask you really for anything. I never really have. And I just said, can you just do this one thing? And I know he hasn't.
Right. Right.
They're
He won't.
they're not
They
gonna.
don't believe in that.
Yeah.
It's not
Hey,
something they
one
believe.
other thing before Derek takes the wheel again. Sorry. Um, I recently took the Hippocratic Oath for myself just
Aw.
because it's free to do. And like, why wouldn't I take that oath? Do no harm.
That's right.
Oh my God. 3 words, you know? And so I'm encouraging everyone I know to take that oath, not only toward themselves, but toward the humanity at large.
That's beautiful.
Because I also have dealt recently with like medical people who I felt didn't even understand or remember that. And you know, nurses don't take that sometimes, only doctors do.
Mm,
And so I just find it really interesting that we like live in this world where if we all just took that oath and made that oath toward others, we wouldn't probably have this podcast.
Right.
yeah. Well, and I do believe though that what Natty was saying earlier is sometimes the harm does happen unintentionally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, so we could easily take that oath, and then we are just
Human.
we're just human. We're just trying to figure it out. And I mean, you talked about earlier, Trent. Can you? I mean, I couldn't imagine having a child in my 20s.
No.
Yeah,
and
I
just
did.
and just trying,
I did too. It was
Bad.
hard.
just trying to figure it out. I only got to a point where I was like, I think I got this shit figured out in my 30s.
Yeah.
And even then it's like I'm
And
43
then you were
now.
like, I'm gonna have a dog. I'm gonna get a dog.
And then I got that fucking dog, and I love her to death, but it's a lot of work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's very challenging. I totally understand. But I do want to steer it back towards, so you're 13 to 15. You got baptized at 13, you left at 15. Can you kind of walk me through those few years as to what finally made you run away?
So I was hanging out a lot with my friends, still moving around with my cousins. They lived in another town that was several hours away, so I would kind of get dropped off Friday, Saturday, and Sunday to go hang out with them. But then I started hanging out a lot more with the kids in my hall and some other kids from other congregations that I had met while I was building, other halls and doing stuff like that. And I started to kind of sneak around with the boy that I liked. And he had a car. By this point, I was still in junior high. So we didn't go to the same school yet. So, like, he couldn't pick me up from school and things like that. My father would have never allowed that. So he started like enticing me to come out more. Like, I'll call your friend because she likes my brother, and we'll go to the movies, or we'll so I started lying to my parents, like, hey, I'm gonna walk over to so and so's house, but obviously he would be down the street. And my friend would be in the car, totally in the car with his brother, and we would start, doing stuff. So that happened probably 4 times. And the final time they came to get me, and he said, well, I gotta run back to my house and pick something up. So we were like, okay, whatever. So we go back to his house. His parents are out of town, and we all went into the house. And my friend and his brother went one way, and he said, "Come with me." So I followed him, and he raped me on the floor of his very shitty house
Mm.
at 14 years old with his brother and my best friend in another room. They heard me screaming. Um, he did his business, and I was hysterical, and I told him to take me the fuck home, and he did. Um, and as soon as I got home, I immediately told my parents what happened. Immediately. And I begged to go to the hospital. I begged to go. And my mother drew me a bath and told me to clean myself up, and that they would not be taking me to the hospital, and I would not be able to call the police, and I would not be allowed to tell anyone. And my father said, that's not how we handle things. And he called one of my uncles, because this boy was in another congregation. His dad was an elder. So they wanted his dad to know what had happened. But my girlfriend called me on the phone, the same girl that was with me. And she said, you can't tell anybody because then I won't be able to hang out with his brother. And, this and that. And her fucking dad recorded all her phone calls. And we didn't know it at the time. So the entire what he did, what happened, every step of the way was on a recorded phone call that her dad turned over to the elders. So even though my dad was an elder, they never called the police. They never wanted to tell anybody what went on. I was just supposed to forget about it, get cleaned up, don't fucking tell anybody, because I would become damaged goods at that point. Nobody's gonna fucking marry me. Nobody's gonna date me. I can't tell anybody. And about 2 hours later, he called to tell me that he really didn't like me, and that I shouldn't really tell anybody what happened. Nobody believed me anyways. He was older than me. He was good looking. He had a lot of women that he liked, and he had a girlfriend for real, and I couldn't tell anybody because he didn't want her to find out. And I didn't know any of this shit before, right?
Yeah.
Um and I was hysterical. Like I couldn't wrap my head around what the fuck had just happened to me, first of all, because I really liked this boy, and I never in a million years thought that he would do that to me.
I'm so it's so
And I never in a million years thought that I had two people standing on the other side of the fucking door that would not help me,
that's so
would not
it's so horrible.
would not hear me. And of course there's a two-person rule. So in order for me to go to the elders or tell anyone, I had to have two witnesses, two people that refused to corroborate my story. But there was a tape. She knew, her dad knew, the brother knew, they all knew. But I could have lived my whole fucking life without five adult grown men dragging me into a fucking room and asking me every horrible thing that had happened to me, verbatim, word for word, asking me if I liked it, asking me what he did to me, asking me if I asked him to stop, like all of these horrible things around men I'd grown up my whole life. These were elders I knew from the time I was a toddler. And my father standing in the corner of the room, and I knew he'd never look at me the same. I knew he would never, ever look at me the same. And I knew the second I left that room that I wasn't a kid anymore, that I couldn't tell the police, so nothing was going to happen to him. And I was more frightened that he was going to go do this to somebody else. I didn't give a fuck about myself. At 14, I had the wherewithal to go, he's going to fucking do this to somebody else. I know he is. And how do you live with that? Knowing that it's not just me. It could have been the three other girls he dated before me. It could have been the girl that he liked, the one that was his girlfriend. I mean, I don't know. I have no idea. And so I became very withdrawn, extremely withdrawn, stopped talking to people. And then they publicly reproved me.
It's a tragedy.
That is a tragedy.
I didn't understand it at the time. I didn't understand why I was being publicly reproved, but my mother and all of my siblings stayed home the night that they did it. My father knew they were going to do it. So he took me to the meeting. I was publicly reproved. He very promptly walked me out of the hall, and he proceeded to beat me and slap me and hit me all the way home. And I didn't even understand what the fuck was happening to me. Like I didn't understand the feelings I was having.
Yeah, so it's like everything that you went through with, again, is such a horrible tragedy, and you hope that the ones that care for you the most are going to be there for you. And in that moment, whether it be your friends or your family,
No one was.
they were all concerned about
How they looked.
whatever the two-person rule. Yeah, I can't lose you as a friend. I don't want to look bad.
Right.
It is a complete breakdown of what humanity is supposed to be all about.
Yeah, I agree.
And trying to be there for people that you care about, let alone your child.
Right.
I am so sorry to hear that. It's such a tragedy. It makes me cry. To give clarity too, in addition, publicly approved means that she's announced on the platform basically that people shouldn't really talk to you moving forward. So it's like you go through a horrible thing like that, and then you're expected to go back to the church or the Kingdom Hall, and then now everyone knows, oh, something's wrong with her. She's not good association.
Yep.
I want to explain why actually it's worse than that. That's how we all remember the public reproving process to be. You get announced, so and so is, it's similar to marking an individual.
Right.
What it's supposed to mean, I think, by the Elders book, is just that something bad has happened with this person, and to avoid scrutiny on Jehovah's name, we publicly reprove to distance ourselves from the actions of this person.
And it's to teach the rest of them a lesson
Well,
that something happened and she wasn't repentive enough.
it's this person did something bad enough that we have to distance ourselves. We're making a statement publicly that we're distancing ourselves from this individual and their views or whatever happened. But the thing is, that's kind of normal in business.
Yeah.
You make, a disclaimer in business and say, hey, this was a contractor of mine, not me. Right.
Right.
But that's how I think that's how in the book, I think it's meant to be. But what it always boiled down to is how we all remember it.
Right.
You're fucking marked.
Yeah, I was.
You get taken out and beat afterward.
Yeah.
That happened to me multiple
Yeah.
times, And it's kind of sad because the true intention, I think, of that process is like functioning for the business. And then that even manages through the game of telephone and bad eldering. It just ends up meaning you're fucked. Your social credibility just went to zero and people are not going to talk to you.
Well, and the sad part is that I was now not eligible anymore for anyone.
Yep.
No one was gonna date me, no one was gonna talk to me. And the sad thing is that he went around and told every other young man that was his age what he did.
Wow.
And then I let him do it.
Wow.
And he laughed at me. I used to see him in passing because our congregations would pass on Sundays. And so the memorial was a couple days later after this happened. And our congregations were passing at the memorial, and he laughed at me. He smirked at me.
Wow.
And I fucking leaped for him. I literally jumped on him in the middle of like the foyer of the Kingdom Hall, hysterically screaming. Like, who the fuck are you? You fucking making fun of me, you piece of shit. Like, went off on him.
I'm glad to hear that, honestly.
And they pulled us apart, but nothing ever happened to him. He was 18. He was baptized. His father was an elder. They never reproved him. They never did anything. They brought him into the same room that I was in with the elders, because so when you're in that committee meeting, you're not allowed to be in there with a parent,
Right.
another woman, anybody. It's only elders. The reason my father was in that room is because he was an elder, and I guarantee you he told him, fuck you, I'm going in that fucking room. I want to know what he did to my daughter. And of course they asked all the questions, but then they brought him in because I am allowed to face my accuser. But at 14 years old, do you know how fucking hard it was to even look at him across the table while he's smiling at me, knowing what he did to me? And he's going, you've enjoyed every minute of it. Like, literally telling other men that I'm delusional, that that's not what happened.
They're going to agree with the man more than the woman.
They absolutely did. They absolutely did. Because I put myself in that situation. I lied to get out of the house. I lied about where I was going. So it was 100% my fault. And they told me that. They told me, this would have never happened had you not lied to your parents, had you not gotten in that car with him, had you not listened to your friend who was older than you and who said, only because she wanted to be with her boyfriend.
I mean, the sad thing too is this is not an isolated case.
No.
What you end up finding out about Jehovah's Witnesses is Natty's story, unfortunately, is not unique. There are so many young women and young ladies and young boys where this has happened to by people that you're supposed to trust, whether it be a friend or one of these shepherds of the congregation. And it's the Jehovah's Witnesses now are finally losing millions of dollars due to litigation for people that are finally fighting back from this shit.
Can I go off on a what really grinds my gears for 1 minute?
Well, I do want to touch one thing before we get too far away from it. The 2-witness rule is touched on.
Yes.
So the 2-witness rule in Jehovah's Witness doctrine is a policy based on their interpretation of the scriptures. One of them is in Deuteronomy 19:15. The others in Matthew 18:16, which say that a matter should be established by testimony of 2 or more witnesses. So in judicial matters, if someone is accused of wrongdoing, like sexual abuse, the elders will generally not act on the accusation unless there's at least 2 witnesses to the act. If there's only one accuser and there's no confession, the elders may leave the matter in Jehovah's hands.
Yep.
And of course, the one that's doing the abuse is never going to say anything.
So you think they're going to bring 2 witnesses with them?
Yeah.
They're going to have two people there. I was just lucky that there was two other people outside, but one was his brother and one was in love with his brother, and neither one of them were going to go to bat for me.
I I hope and wonder that those two individuals carry that heavy weight with them, for the wrongdoing that they did to you, but by not
Agreed.
saying something and taking action. I never,
Well, I hope that they all have daughters.
yeah,
I hope they all have daughters, and I hope they've had to think about what happened from the moment those young babies were born.
yeah.
Like, what did I allow, and is this going to happen to my kid?
Well, and that's the other thing I want to touch on before you, Trent, take your thought. I imagine someone listening to this who maybe never grew up in a high control group or a cult is immediately going, "Why didn't anyone call the police?" And
Well, that's not how it's done.
well, and that's the thing is, and I'd love you to touch on that, Natty. Is it's just the mindset of how we were raised. We would never do that.
No.
It's a brother.
Right.
It's your brother? Why would you want your brother to be in jail?
Well, and we also grew up with this mindset that we're not a part of the world.
Yes.
And so the hierarchy is
their rules don't apply to us.
We go to our elders who are shepherding the congregation in the flock.
Right.
We don't go to this man-made police type thing. We go to the elders. They're going to shepherd us.
Well, it's because the whole world is lying in the power of Satan.
Right.
Satan controls the police, Derek, in case you didn't know.
But now, yeah, now I'm so removed from it. It's like I'm fucking calling that police the second.
Yeah. Yeah, that's all you have to do.
But I knew even at a very young age that I should have been taken to a hospital, and I should have been able to file a report. And I begged and begged them to please. Because at that age I had no idea that I could have even gotten pregnant. Do you understand? Like, my mind, I didn't understand.
Yeah.
So, and my parents didn't even think about that. They never even thought that would have been a possibility.
And of course, you would never be able to abort the child or anything. And that leads down a whole nother potential life and conversation that would come from that. Natty, I'm so sorry. It's just horrible.
We could spend a couple hours telling you why we're sorry.
I mean, that's huge. Obviously life-changing. So from the moment that happened, it kind of starts this trajectory for you. So just kind of walk me through that path.
It did. And so that happened in April, and I started to deteriorate more and more. I stopped going to school, so my parents had to pull me out of school and they had to homeschool me. I began to really act out, really just being very defiant, getting in the car with my mother to go to the grocery store at night and literally hanging out the door screaming, like, just really like trying to purge a lot of these feelings that I was having, because I was never allowed to talk about it after it happened with anyone. Like, nobody, not my mother, not my father, not my, siblings. It was a river in Egypt called denial.
Oh my gosh.
I just wasn't allowed to ever, ever speak about it at all. And I was having all of these crazy feelings. I was very suicidal. I thought a lot about killing myself. And my dad went out of town one day. This was in December, so several months later. And my mom went to go pick him up at the airport. And I called my only friend at school that I knew had a car, because I was homeschooled at the time, but I still kept in touch with some of my friends at school. And I asked him to come and pick me up, and he did. And I asked him to drive me to a friend's house, some guy that I had met somewhere. I got his phone number, and he, wanted to date me, whatever, some worldly guy. And I said, I have a car and I want to come and see you. And he's like, sure, no problem. And I grabbed my Bart Simpson backpack and a change of clothes, and I walked out of my house, and I never went back.
It's horrible to think that at that time, the safest thing for you to do was run and go to the arms of a random dude.
Random stranger
You know what I mean?
that I had only talked to on the phone maybe twice, didn't know him.
And you're like, this is better than home.
Yes, it was.
Yeah.
It was. And so I stayed with him, ended up at a frat house. It was a fucking frat house. I had just had my 15th birthday. I had just turned 15. And I spent one night at his house and told him I was a runaway, and he fucking lost it because he was a college dude, and he was like, "You can't fucking stay here. Like, you're 15. Like, what the fuck?" Like, he immediately freaked the fuck out and was like, "I'm gonna protect you tonight. I'm gonna feed you. You can stay with me in my room." Like, he told his roommates what had happened and that I had left.
Well, the neighborly Samaritan.
Acted truly Christ-like.
He absolutely did. And he was kind, and I cried all fucking night long. I was terrified, and he said, "Nobody here is going to hurt you. No, nobody's going to hurt you. I have a little sister." Like, he had a fucking sister my age or something crazy. And he was like, "You're going to be fine. Like, where can we take you?" And I said, "I have nowhere to go." All of my family were witnesses at the time. So he let me borrow his cell phone, and back then I had like a piece of paper with all phone numbers and addresses of everybody that I knew with me. And so I started to go down the line and call friends, family. "Can I come and stay with you? I've left home." And my father had already called everybody and said, "If you help her, I'll call the fucking cops. Don't you dare. She's on drugs. She's crazy. She's..."
Oh, now she wants to call the cops.
Yeah. So she's crazy. She can't be trusted. She's out of control. And so my entire family fucking froze. Like, fuck, we can't help her. And I only had one, my loving aunt. I love her more than anything. She's like my mother, and she wanted to help me. Her husband was in the military though, and she knew that if I came, I could help her with her young children. She had young children at the time. I was 15. I totally listened to her. Like, I would, I would do anything to just have a place to sleep. And they were going to send me a bus ticket. And my father called and threatened to call the MPs. And I think her husband had just moved up. He was going up in rank, and he would have gotten in a, like, you can't fucking harbor a runaway. But I was never reported to the police as missing. So he was just threatening people. They were all empty threats, but at the time, this is 1995. No one knows that this is bullshit. They're all terrified. Like, what the
Yeah.
fuck is he gonna do? And so of course that fell through. And after one night with this lovely young man that I found and that was kind to me, I just started sleeping on couches. Anybody, friends, like, I bounced from his friends' houses like strangers. I stayed on park benches. I ate out of trash cans. I stole food. I I would stay at anybody's house I could. I would rather live under a fucking bridge than ever have gone home. And I did. I did. And finally I found a guy. It was really nice. I was actually living in a fucking trailer with this old elderly lady who housed pregnant teenagers. It was like a halfway house for pregnant girls. And I wasn't pregnant. I was homeless, and she found me at the grocery store. I think I was stealing food, and the cops were coming, and I was fucking running from the manager at the store. And she's like, "You can come stay at my house. I have a house, and I house girls who are homeless." And I stayed there one night, and the girls, like, they were catty and crazy, and they stole my clothes and like crazy shit, right? So I happened to run in, like, I'm walking down the street. I happened to run into this guy, and he says, "Well, I know the other dude, and he said you needed a place to stay." And I was like, "Yeah." And he was like, "You can come stay at my house." He was 23, and his parents owned a bar, and he let me stay with him, and he didn't hurt me. And his mother was really nice, and she said, how old are you? And I said, I'm 18. And she said, okay. She's like, you know, and I said, I don't have any parents. My parents are dead. I don't have any family. And she said, you could stay here. And I worked in their bar. And I dated her son for a little while, but he was very bad. He was a gangster, and he lived a very crazy fucking life. Like I said, he was 23. So while I was living with him, this went on for a couple years. I stayed with them, and they were very kind to me. She treated me like a daughter. I mean, I had chores to do in their house, and I worked for food, and you know, I sat with them and ate dinner. They were a normal fucking family, but he was bad, and he didn't have any supervision, and that he could do no wrong. She let him get away with everything, and he ended up being involved in a capital murder. And while I was living there, I was 16 when he went to prison, and he was given the lethal injection in the state of Texas. I loved him very much. He was a good guy, and he showed me that just because people were worldly, I found more care and compassion in the world than I ever did even in my own home, you know?
Isn't that true?
And
That's exactly what I had to talk about. So let me just interject whenever you finish your thought.
no, I'm good. I lost him, and I was really young, and I thought I found a family, and it was really devastating to lose him. And he told me before, when he went to prison, to just go live my life, that I was too young to wait for him. He's like, they're going to kill me. I'm going to die here, And he was older than me, and they always thought I was 18. It wasn't until after he died that they found out that I was a minor, and his mom just hugged me and said she loved me. And I told her, I have to go. I got to find somewhere else to go, you know? They were some of the kindest people I had ever met.
I'm a real big believer in you really have to embrace that the world is full of both terrible and wonderful.
Yes, I agree.
Yeah.
And so there's these small moments where you see these people, and it's like, that guy could have been a very similar asshole as well.
I know.
And you're like, I have no choice but to trust these people. I don't know what to do. And younger people are very trustworthy, as they should be, and hope that the people that they interact with are. Yeah, I'm so grateful that you were able to find that situation through that process. But Trent, did you want to kind of interject with what you were kind of thinking?
Yes, because it's kind of big. Honestly, I've been holding on to it. But
Yeah, go for it.
what you're describing is humanity. And it's the same kind of humanity that Jesus brought when he was on earth. Jesus of Nazareth, just like from reading the Bible. I'm not talking about witnesses right now,
Yeah.
right? And you were able to sense that in worldly people.
Yeah.
And I think that's beautiful, Natty. Like, it's hard to do, especially when you're raised a witness and you're a freaking teenage girl
Right.
who doesn't know anything really,
Nothing. I knew nothing.
but you're able to feel it.
Yeah.
Me and Derek had the biggest falling out we've ever had. And we talk about it on pod frequently. And it's funny to me now because I had sensed the cognitive dissonance that I'll explain here. And it took him a little longer maybe to speak it out loud, but he had always known it was true. And so let me talk to you from the Bible. I remember this story about this one guy with a bunch of his apostles, and he's walking through the wheat fields on a Sunday, and he's taking little pieces of wheat and eating them as he walks, which people do when they're going through wheat. And the fucking scribes and Pharisees come up to him, and they're like, "Why are you harvesting wheat on the Sabbath, you cur? How fucking dare you even do that?" And he's like, "Well, I think it's okay to do this kind of work on the Sabbath. And I think that what I'm doing is setting a new precedent for people because y'all scribes and Pharisees have kind of taken the meaning of the Sabbath and twisted it into something disgusting because you're using it to control and oppress people."
Yeah.
Okay, like that's one parable from the Bible that like anyone can read for free, right? And then there's this prostitute who loved Jesus. She's a literal prostitute, and she makes good enough money that she can afford oil. And it's funny because they always say that she was broke and she must have saved and scrimped I bet she was just a good prostitute who could afford good oil. I'm not kidding. She was OnlyFans girl back in the day, probably. And so she buys this dope oil and she sits down and kneels at Jesus's feet. And I can't remember if she washes his feet or if she oils his beard or what. And Jesus not only allowed that, but I think he said, like, you are going to receive your gift in the heavens.
Wow.
And then he's picking up, and then the same dude, Jesus of Nazareth, whoever the fuck that is, walks into the temple and fucking throws and hurls shit all over the fucking temple. He's like, you guys are making my house, my God, my dad's house disgusting. Get the fuck out of here.
That's the modern version.
And he does it with a whip, right? And so those are three examples of this one guy, Jesus of Nazareth, who was not a worldly person. And he was not one of Jehovah's Witnesses, was he? He was Jehovah's son, or at least part of like the triune God of the Bible, or at very least like a historical figure. And so how the fuck can we as Jehovah's Witnesses in good faith say that, you know, acting in a scribatorial or pharisaical way would be anything close to the truth is what really got me. Because, for instance, the man who gave you shelter as a 15-year-old girl actually acted more like Jesus probably than any of those elders did. Like, that's fucking crazy to me.
But that's what confused me even more thoroughly is that
This is why people leave, right?
right, like,
Because the confusion.
Well, and we are taught that the world is in, you know, Satan has the world,
right.
you know, so it's like the world out there is a very scary place,
I was terrified. Yeah.
and you're only going to find comfort within the flock.
Right.
And so I totally understand that it could be super confusing. And that's actually what I wanted to ask you is, obviously you're dealing with a lot of external issues, but throughout this process over the year or two, and you're kind of going through this, like, where was your mind at in terms of your faith?
I had none. I didn't believe in God. I didn't believe there was a God. I believe that they allowed men to act a certain way and it was all about control, and I started to really see like that I wasn't wrong, that it was weird, that it wasn't true. It had to have been a lie. Like, how could there be a man named or God named Jehovah that would allow this to happen to me? I was a child. I was 14 years old. I still had fucking Cabbage Patch Kids on my bed. I took a Bart Simpson backpack when I left the fucking house.
Yeah.
I was a child. So if there's a God, he never heard me crying. He didn't come to my rescue. Every time I prayed that somebody would find me, that my parents would look for me, that the cops would show up and take me away from wherever I was and take me back in this magical way home. There was no fucking God. There was nobody coming. There was no one coming to save me.
Yeah. That is a harsh reality that I think a lot of people, well, I shouldn't say a lot of people. I'm thankful that most people start to learn that no one else is going to do it but yourself.
No.
And not even necessarily if someone's gone through a tragedy like you. That's just in general. Like, you know, it's up to each of our own selves to make sure that we're good.
Right.
And any extra support along the way, great.
Yeah.
But a lot of people continue to go down that spiraling path, and I think you had every reason to continue to go down that path from that point onward. But what were the next steps of you kind of getting out of that? So you're 16, 17.
So I had a boyfriend and I was, just kind of moving around. I finally got my oldest sister, who was not a witness, who lived in another state, to allow me to live there. I mean, through all the balking and bitching that my family did, she was like, she's a child raised in your weird fucking religion. She doesn't understand anything or know anyone. She's been living with fucking strangers, sleeping on couches, and Like, the one dude she trusted and loved, he's in prison now. Like, she can't stay alone. Like, she has to come here. So she allowed me to live with her for a little while, and I stayed with her and helped her with her kids for a couple years. And I met a boy that was really nice. And, I my sister was very hard on me. I was very bad. You could not tell me what to do. It didn't matter who you were. I was not going to listen to anybody. So we would get in fist fights. We would fight and bitch and slap each other all the way down the street. She would drag me home by the hair. I mean, I was bad.
When you
And I
when
wasn't
you
listening.
I was gonna say, when you look at how you acted out back then, what was the mixture of kind of who you naturally were as a person, and then what was the mixture of who you became because of that horrible experience? And then also, to follow up, have you kind of looked back at those moments and you're like, this is why I acted that way?
I was terrified, I think, and I was never going to let anybody tell me what to do ever again, because the people that had been telling me what to do for so long were the very people who continued to hurt me, who didn't have my best interest at heart, who didn't fucking protect me. So I wasn't going to be told what to do. So I was dating every bad guy that I could find, every drug dealer, every gangster, and I eventually became very well known to those kind of boys that were, she's down. She's that down bitch.
I'll have you know that I only date drug dealers too. To this day, actually. It's a requirement. I'm just that hood.
I was bad, and I lived in a really, really bad place, and I was just dating. And I think living with my sister and her really trying to rein me in and turn me into the nice little girl that I was, it wasn't going to happen. So she's like, I have to release the reins a little and kind of let you be who you're going to be. And I think the change in me happened when I was dating a guy that wasn't so great, and she literally dragged me out of his house by my hair. And a couple of days later, I heard that there was a young lady that was staying at his house that ended up being murdered because there was a drive-by shooting at his house. And had my sister not pulled me out of there by my fucking hair, kicking and screaming because I didn't want to be with her and her stupid kids, and I didn't want to go back to a fucking the poorhouse, and I didn't grow up that way, and I lived in the hood, and I thought it was weird, and I was bitching, and I thought I knew everything, and she saved my life because I would have been laying in that bed next to him, and I would have been that girl.
Mm.
And so I think after that happened, I something in me really woke up, and I said I got to get the fuck out of here. And so I traveled to California, and I lived there, and I met a really nice man, and I dated him for several years, and his family was in the military, and he was good to me. I don't think I loved him. I don't think I knew what love was anymore. I don't think I was in a relationship for a very long time that I even understood what the word meant. And he was also not a he was a good guy, but he was also a gangster. And I was sitting on the porch of his house one day, and I saw a white man with a beard walking down the street, and he was preaching to everybody in the barrio that would listen to him. And he walked up to the gate. They had a really big gate in front of their house. In LA, there's, everybody has gates around everything, metal doors, things like that. Everybody sits on the porch out front because it's pretty hot. Nobody has AC. They usually have swamp coolers, that kind of stuff. So I remember sitting out front, and I had just gotten off work. And I had a respectable job. My boyfriend was a gangster, and I had a respectable job with like a briefcase and everything. I wore suits every day. Like I did. I'm not kidding. Like I had a good job, and I faked it till I made it. And with an eighth grade education, I looked at that man, and he came up to the gate, and he said, "Can I give you a pamphlet?" And I said, "Sure." And I looked at him, and I said, "Hey, you're awfully white to be around here. You don't belong here, vato." I told him like that. And he looked at me with such kind eyes, and he said, "No, mija, you don't belong here."
Oh.
And I was like, fuck. Like, he
Oh my
broke
goodness.
me, And I look back at my boyfriend sitting on the porch, looked at him and kind of nodded and said, "Thanks for stopping by, Father Greg. We're going to get her out of here." And I knew then that my boyfriend at the time had called him. And he helps inner city kids get out of gangs. He changes lives. He's one of the best men I've ever met in my life. And he's a preacher.
Where's he from?
LA, from Long Beach.
Is he still there?
He is there. He has a huge industry of and community of helping inner city kids get out of gangs and rehabilitating. He removes tattoos from gang members' faces for free. He is one of the best men I've ever met in my life, and he fucking saved my life.
I'm glad to hear him. Offline, you got to tell me his name so I can just put some respect on him.
I will, absolutely. So I don't know if you follow any of my private pages, but I do mention him pretty often.
Okay.
And
I don't, but I will if you just send him to me.
I, at some point in my life, as I get more comfortable in my own skin and with my own story, will eventually take my children to meet him, because every time I've ever gone to LA and anytime I've ever walked in his office, he has always stood up and greeted me and hugged me.
Love that.
And he always told us, kids from that area, that we are not what has happened to us. And he's always loved the forgotten and the demonized by calling it out and saying, these are human beings, these are people, these are children, and these are products of environment. And
The nurture part is very real.
yes, and he always told me that it doesn't matter what happened to you, it doesn't matter what you did or who you became, it matters what you do from this point forward and how you treat people. And as long as you're a good person and you love and you give grace, that it doesn't matter what religion you are or what color you are, that you're a good person and that you fucking matter. And he was probably one of the only men in my life that ever hugged me and didn't want something from me. So at a very young age, I started to really respect myself and who I was. And I did leave that place very shortly after. And I thank him for that. And I thank my boyfriend that called him to get me out of there. And I made some great friends along the way. And I moved away from there. And I worked and I surfed and I sold a little bit of pot and I smoked a little bit of pot. And I really just found myself and who I was, and eventually I was able to move in with a family member, and I pieced together this family. She allowed me in, and she's always treated me like a mother, and she raised me essentially in my, late 20s. I was like 19, 20 when I moved in with her. And she had teenage boys, and she essentially raised us three together, and they are my siblings, and I love them very much. And we became a family. As broken and as tattered as we all were, we became a family, a piecemealed family. And she knew what I had been through, and she accepted me with open arms, didn't ask any questions. And I lived with her until I, was able to move out and get my own place and do my own things. But I think that I'm not sad about anything that happened, because it made me who I am, and it made me very strong. And I am able to walk into a room and literally I can size people up in 5 minutes because of living on the streets, because of living in the world. And Derek knows me. I'm a hard ass. I'm not easy to get by. I require a lot of respect,
Yeah.
but I give it. I try to be a good teacher. I've been a manager in my life. I've dealt with big projects, $1 million projects, and had lots of people under me. And I've also been a worker bee in my life. And I just try to be honest and kind. And I don't think I would be who I am if this had not happened. And my own parents call me a feral child. I was very feral and I didn't trust anyone. I still don't. It takes a long time for me to trust people and to want to be around people. The friends that I have had my whole life. I make friends for life because they know they can trust me and I know I can trust them.
Yeah.
If I don't talk to you, that means I don't like you. I don't trust you. Like, it is what it is, you know? But
Yeah, I've start to learn, like, over time. I've come to learn, like, Trent and I have talked about this a bunch. Like, I very much approach things from the scientific method,
yeah,
and that that's kind of, I don't know, just how my brain works with logic and kind of rule sets. But I'm also very open to knowing that there's a lot of weird stuff out there that I can't
yeah,
explain. And one of those things is an empathetic connection, an empathy that sometimes people can just
right.
sense. Like you said, you can read
Yeah,
people.
Yeah.
There's something there that can't be explained. And I find it interesting is when I met you years
yeah,
ago, gosh, 20
yeah,
years ago,
yeah,
we're getting there. Um, there was something there where I sensed something with you, where I was like, I can see she's kind of a hard ass,
hmm,
but I could sense your heart.
yeah,
And it's interesting that you also sense something in me.
hmm,
Because I think about, as I was training you and kind of manage you and showing the ropes, I always wondered what would Natty do with someone else if it wasn't me showing her the ropes. Um, and it's kind of informative to kind of hear your journey, which brought you to when I originally met you.
yeah,
Um, that I imagine there's a large part too, where it's like if especially more so if you're a guy, you better you better bring something to the table to make it worth us to keep talking.
yeah, for sure.
So where are you now? Who are you now after this long journey? If you could kind of break down where you've kind of landed at this moment in your life.
I'm a wife and I am a mother. I've been married for over 20 years. I have two grown children that are in college. I just tried real hard not to fuck them up,
That's all you can do. That's all you can do.
you know, not to give them my fears and my my shit, to raise them with love and kindness, but also let them know how crazy the world is and that you have to depend on yourself. You have to work hard. No one's coming to save you. You got to figure things out. I've ran three very successful businesses with my husband. And I think when I found him, I was a single mom. I had two young kids. I had a 2-year-old and an infant when we met. And I think he was just as broken as I was and looking for love, true love. And I think when we found each other, like, it was almost immediate. I knew I was going to marry him and I was going to be with him forever. I will literally die holding his hand.
Love that.
He will be my best friend forever. And he has helped me raise my children as his own. They are not his children, but they call him daddy. I have two successful, kind children who got to finish high school, who got to go to prom, who get to date and who get to have jobs, and all of the first that I never got, my children do. And I get to see them and their face and their happiness, and I get to go through their breakups and their tears, and you know first day of college.
You get to live a little vicariously through
I
them.
do, and I get to be there on the first day of college and the wonderful days when they graduated from high school that I never got. And I'm really just fucking proud that I'm alive and that I survived with a family that I had to create, and I have a tribe that I love and that they love me. And, you know, we're crazy and we're loud and we have a lot of fun. I mean, we have 30 Nerf guns in my house with over 180 bullets, and we have
Yeah.
Nerf gun fights. And I mean, my son is
I've
6'2".
got a
He's
bunch too.
grown up, old enough to drink. And dude, we have the most fun running around, screaming, breaking windows, just having a good time. Like, my house is so warm and inviting and calm and loving. And I didn't grow up in a house like that. So I had to make sure that I was giving that to my children. And I have an eighth grade education and I've owned 3 businesses and I have a very successful business now. And you're the only people that I've ever told that I didn't graduate high school.
Mm.
Thank you.
Our secret conversation will never go out to anyone.
And I
won't tell anyone.
love who I am and I love my very quiet life and I'm very, very lucky.
Yeah, you should feel so proud of everything you've done based on what you've told me you've been through to get to this point. Yeah, it's amazing. Yeah, what a fighter, what a like I don't know, it's just I like I said at the outset and I've said over and over, I truly think that it's important that people need to hear this shit.
As it is, just you telling your story is enough for people to just hear. And I know many people who will be touched by just hearing what you say. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's and each time we sit and chat with someone and have a conversation, it's going to be very unique. There's going to be a lot of fortunate similarities, but there'll be very unique stories like this of perseverance and fight and grit and determination. And obviously your story is not completely done. Thankfully, we still got a few years left in us.
Yeah, I
But
do.
but it's like, man, what an ability to overcome the muck and provide, also importantly, a really really good foundation for your kiddos, and just in order for them to bring in the next wave of people, if they have kids themselves. um, it's so great to hear. I did want to ask you a question right before we close out,
Sure.
and I like to ask this question. What would you say to someone maybe that's kind of grown up in maybe a very controlling environment, whether they're younger or maybe they're starting to question things, maybe they come across this podcast? What would be some things maybe you'd say to them just based on your life experience that you would hope that someone would have told you?
Don't be afraid to question things. Don't be afraid when your gut tells you something's wrong, something's wrong. You got to listen to that little voice inside you, your Jiminy Cricket. You got to listen to it. And if that means that maybe you think you're going to lose everything if you make a decision, sometimes it's the best thing for you. You can't be afraid. It's your life. You only get one. If you got to fucking run, run. Do what you got to do. But you got to be true to yourself because no one's coming.
It's powerful. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me. Thank you for allowing me the space to tell my story. I wouldn't have done it with anyone else but you.
You know what? Not only did you get this space for this amount of time, but I think you're welcome back whenever you want to come back, and we'll sit down with you whenever. So you have multiple spaces across time
Oh,
and the United States digitally here.
I
So
appreciate you. I'd love to do that.
Well, everyone that just listened, thank you so much for listening. Thank you, Natty, for being here for me and for everyone. Um, we're going to be back soon with more conversations, and we hope that you continue to listen in. Uh, Natty, you're our record winner. This is the longest podcast we've ever done.
Oh,
and it's because I specifically blocked off 5 hours so that we could do as long as we needed.
oh Trent, I love you too, buddy.
So we're thankful that I don't know. It's interesting. I talk about my situation. It's like, I feel like I had it tough. Everyone has their own version of tough.
Yeah,
And you definitely had it tough. So thank you so much.
I love you,
Yeah,
dude.
thank
Thanks
you.
so much for having me.
Yeah.
I'll talk to
Hopefully.
you soon.
Yeah. We'll chat soon.
All right. Take care.
Thank you for joining us on this journey in this era. If you found today's episode valuable, please share it with someone who might need it. Check the podcast description for our socials and other information.
Please consider supporting us at Patreon at patreon.com/culturepod. If you'd like to tell your story, please contact us at cult.chur.pod@gmail.com. Until next time, stay curious, stay critical, and stay free.